My husband and I are going to an indoor water park resort for a few days. We're taking his biological child, Avery, who is 14, my biological child, Robin, who is 9, and our child Alex, who is 2. This will be the first time since Infection 19 that we've been able to do something like this with the kids. Avery wants to invite a friend to go with us for the weekend. I'm not a fan of this and told my husband that. When Avery does invite a friend over, they and the friend stay locked in the bedroom, gaming, talking, refusing to come out to talk or eat with everyone else. And it feels like, other than the noise they make, they might as well not even be here. We're lucky if Avery speaks more than 10 words to us the whole weekend when they bring a friend over. That said, I told my husband I'm really worried about that being what happens if Avery brings a friend on the trip. Avery will spend all the time with their friend and none with us. And with this being our first time away since Infection 19, I really want it to be family time. My husband said that he'd set rules that Avery and their friend would get some time during the day to do their own thing, but the rest of the time would be spent doing things all together. It's not even the case at home, so why would that be the case now? But if he's positive he can make that happen, go ahead. My husband called Avery. We were both talking to them and told them the rules and expectations. Avery said sure, no problem, then said the friend they originally invited couldn't go, so they invited a new friend they recently made. That's not a big deal, and it happens. I asked Avery this new friend's name. Avery said Jade, and for the parents' phone number, Avery started saying it's fine. Jade's parents don't mind if they go with us, and besides, they don't even know Jade's parents' numbers, but they promise it's fine. At that point, my husband told Avery to call or text Jade, get their parents' number, and get it to him by the end of the day. We've never met Jade or their parents, and I wasn't sure if it was a good idea to bring a kid we hadn't met on the trip, and I said as much. Anyway, 11 p.m. rolls around, and Avery texts their dad that they didn't get Jade's parents' number. But it's still okay because it's fine for Jade to go, and their parents don't mind. I said to my husband that I don't agree with taking another child several hours away without at least talking to the parents, and making sure they don't mind, and know where we will be and how to contact us directly. My husband agrees, and told Avery that, and since they didn't get us a way to contact Jade's parents, they are no longer allowed to bring a friend on the trip. Avery is upset and blames me for ruining the trip for them, and told us they're going to have the worst weekend of their life. My husband feels bad for how Avery feels, but says he does agree with me, and I just feel bad about it all around. Are we in the wrong? Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Not the idiot. You ruined the trip. You asked for a phone number. Either there is a reason Avery is avoiding getting it for you, which would immediately prevent the friend from going, or Avery just doesn't want to put any effort into it. Regardless, it was a simple request, and Avery chose not to follow through, and now wants to blame you for her own inaction. Comment 2. Not the idiot. And I would bet that Jade's parents have already refused to let them go, and that's why the kids are being evasive about giving you the phone numbers. There's no way that a teenager does not know their parents' numbers or have them stored in their own device. Now, for the update, Day 1. So, we arrived at the indoor water park resort, and let me tell you, the tension was thick. Avery was still sulking about not being able to bring Jade along. They barely said a word to us during the car ride, just had their headphones on and stared out the window. It was a quiet trip, except for Alex's occasional babbling and Robin's excited chatter about the water slides they saw online. We checked into our suite, and it was pretty nice, with enough room for all of us. My husband tried to cheer Avery up by suggesting we hit the biggest water slide first, but Avery just shrugged and mumbled something about not caring. It was heartbreaking to see them so upset, but we had to stick to our decision for safety reasons. Avery's mood didn't improve much throughout the day. They went on a few slides with us, but spent most of the time sitting on a lounge chair, texting. I guess they were messaging Jade or other friends. My husband and I exchanged worried glances, but focused on making sure Robin and Alex had a good time. Day 2. The next day started with a surprise. Avery was already up and dressed when we woke up, which was unusual. They said they wanted to check out the arcade, and to our shock, they asked Robin if they wanted to come along. Robin was thrilled, of course. It seemed like Avery was finally coming around, and we felt a little relieved. While the kids were at the arcade, my husband and I took Alex to the kiddie pool. That's when we ran into some drama. We saw a group of teenagers being loud and rowdy, and one of them looked a lot like Jade. My husband and I exchanged a look, and he decided to go over and ask if they were Jade. Turns out it was Jade, and they were here with their family. My husband pulled me aside, and we had a quick, hushed conversation about what to do. We decided to confront Avery about it later, away from the kids. We didn't want to cause a scene, but we were both feeling pretty betrayed. Later that evening, after dinner, we sat down with Avery and asked them about Jade. Avery's face went pale, and they started to stammer. They admitted that Jade's family was staying at the same resort and that they had planned to meet up the whole time. Avery begged us not to be mad and said they just wanted to spend time with their friend. It was a jaw-dropping moment for us. We felt lied to and manipulated. My husband was especially hurt because he had trusted Avery to follow the rules. We told Avery that we needed to think about how to handle this and that we were very disappointed. Day 3. The last day of our trip was the hardest. After a long talk, my husband and I decided that Avery needed to understand the consequences of their actions. We told Avery that they would not be allowed to have friends over for a month, and we would be having a serious talk about trust when we got home. Avery was heartbroken. They cried and said they were sorry, that they didn't think it was a big deal, and just wanted to have fun with their friend. It was tough to see them so upset, but we knew we had to stand firm on this. The rest of the day was spent with the family, but the mood was somber. Robin and Alex could sense the tension and were quieter than usual. My husband and I did our best to keep things light, but it was hard not to feel the weight of the situation. As we packed up to leave, Avery was quiet again, lost in thought. They helped with Alex and Robin without being asked, which was a small silver lining. Maybe they were starting to understand the importance of family and honesty. Moved back to childhood town and renovated Grandma's house. She gifted me, but relatives sue me until I present letters of her wishes at family meeting, and oh boy, they back down. Backstory: I had an ugly divorce in 2010-2011, details not important. So I ended up moving back to my childhood town. I bought an apartment, but the people asked 2 months to move out. I still needed a place for that time. My mother told me that since I work from home, I could help out her mother as she fell on slippery stairs and was bound to a wheelchair. Other relatives wanted to put her in a nursing home and sell the house to cover the costs, as her home was heated with firewood. It meant she could not do half of the stuff by herself, and I agreed to do it. She has 4 daughters and a son. The first 2 months went by quickly, and we found out that my 75-year-old grandmother would not heal enough to get rid of her wheelchair. She asked me if maybe I could just rent my new apartment out and stay with her, and I agreed to stay longer, and decided that this house needs some renovation, as keeping it warm was an effort itself. So I decided to build a central heating system there and build a new wheelchair-accessible bathroom. By 2015, I had spent so much money on the house that I had a "what is going to happen if you are not here anymore" talk with my grandmother, and asked if it would be okay if I buy out my other relatives, aunts and uncle, as they wanted to sell it anyway. Grandmother thought that was a good idea and told me that we had to make some kind of plan, but we did not talk about it in detail. On her birthday, when all the relatives were at the table, she told everyone that she decided to give that house as a gift, but nobody seemed to care. But it sure was a surprise to me. A few weeks later, I found out she was serious, as she asked me to take her to the notary. The notary asked her if she was sure about it. The answer was, "He has invested so much money in the house and has taken care of me for years, it must be worth something." And so it happened. The house was in my name. I might be old, but not senile. And that was that. I owned the house and decided to sell my apartment and finish renovating the house. The asbestos-based roof needed to be changed, chimney leg, house insulation, electrical wiring, etc. The list was long. More years went by, and it was 2023. One day, at age 87, my grandmother did not wake up one morning. A few months after the funeral, youngest of my aunts appeared at my home with a real estate appraiser. And this is the the idiot part. For some reason, they all thought that my grandmother was not serious years back, and she was so sure that we should sell the place, and my mother with her brother and sisters split the money. My mother and her oldest sister agreed with my grandmother's decision, but others sued me for using an elderly person for financial gain. Like a week ago, I got notice that they failed to provide any proof about my grandmother's inability to make decisions. The court can't change nothing. Now they don't talk to each other, and I have so many messages calling me a greedy jerk. Am I the idiot? Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. not the idiot. My God, deaths in the family bring out the worst in everyone. One of my grandmothers had to sneak my inheritance into the inheritance of one of her children, to be transferred to me. I'd cared for her for years, but we knew the cousins who hadn't even visited her for nearly a decade would take me to court if they knew how much money she'd left me. Comment 2. Not the idiot. You took care of your grandmother when they didn't want to. You renovated the house with your own money and updated it. She gave it to you because you deserved it. They can be upset all they want, but why do they think they can profit on what you fixed? Now for the update. Hey everyone, thanks for all the comments on my last post. I've got a pretty wild update for you all. So, after the court ruled in my favour, I thought that would be the end of it. But boy, was I wrong. The youngest aunt, let's call her Aunt Karen, was not about to let this go. She's always been the type to stir the pot, even back when we were kids. She'd be the one to convince us to sneak out, and then be the first to rat us out when we got caught. 3 days ago, I woke up to the sound of a truck outside. I peeked through the window and saw Aunt Karen directing a moving crew towards my house. I rushed outside, and she was already halfway up the driveway, waving some papers in the air, claiming she had a right to start clearing out the house for sale. I couldn't believe the nerve of her. I confronted her, and she shoved the papers in my face. They were obviously fake, but the moving crew didn't know that. I had to think fast. I remembered that my grandmother always kept detailed records of everything, a habit from her days running a small community library. I ran inside, found the notary's official documents, and showed them to the moving crew. They stopped immediately, not wanting to get involved in a legal dispute. Aunt Karen was fuming. She started yelling about how I had manipulated our grandmother and that she would get the house one way or another. It was a scene straight out of a soap opera, and the neighbours were starting to take notice. The next day, I got a call from my mother's oldest sister, Aunt Mary. She's always been the peacemaker of the family. She told me that she and my mother had been talking, and they were worried about the family falling apart over this. Aunt Mary had always been close to my grandmother, helping her with her garden and listening to her stories about the old days. She knew how much my grandmother valued family and how much she appreciated what I had done for her. Aunt Mary suggested a family meeting, without lawyers, just us, to try and settle things once and for all. I agreed, thinking it couldn't get any worse. The meeting was tense. Aunt Karen came in with guns blazing, accusing me of everything under the sun. But Aunt Mary had a surprise up her sleeve. She brought out letters my grandmother had written to her over the years, talking about how grateful she was for my help and how she wanted me to have the house. The letters showed a side of my grandmother that Aunt Karen couldn't argue with, her clear, sound mind and her affection for me. The room went silent as Aunt Mary read out loud a particular letter where my grandmother expressed her wish for me to inherit the house, dated years before her passing. It was a jaw-dropping moment, and even Aunt Karen had to sit down, her face pale. The confrontation seemed to take the wind out of Aunt Karen's sails. She didn't apologize, but the fight had gone out of her. The other aunts and my uncle were quiet, some of them looking embarrassed. They had known my grandmother well, and they couldn't deny her words. In the end, justice was served, but not in a courtroom. It was those letters, filled with my grandmother's love and intentions, that put an end to the dispute. Aunt Karen left the meeting early, and I haven't heard from her since. The rest of the family stayed behind, and we ended up sharing stories about my grandmother, laughing and crying together. It felt like she was there with us, her spirit finally at peace. Bridesmaid expected to pay for everything at friend's wedding, but when fiancé cheats and wedding's off, I help her see that flashy isn't always better, and honesty wins. My friend is getting married later this year, and her sister, bridesmaid number 1, bridesmaid number 2, and I are bridesmaids. The bride got engaged in 2022, but plans to marry this year. In this 1.5-year span, there have been several instances that have accumulated and finally started bugging me. She's planning a $100,000 a year destination wedding, expecting a lot from guests and bridesmaids without considering the financial strain. My opinion about it is, if you can't afford it, don't do it. Highlights of my grievances include an engagement party, which was technically a baby queue at the lake. Everyone had to bring their own drink and food. A bridal shower, not a bachelorette, which was a brunch, and everyone had to pay their own, approximately $100 per person. For the bachelorette party, we planned to fly to yet another European country, and all attendees chipped in to pay for their own and her part, approximately $1,000 per person. A civil wedding requiring a day off, which annoys my boyfriend the most, and a pricey dinner at a 3-star restaurant, approximately $300 to $400 per person, paid by the invitees. The wedding itself, flights, rental car, hotel, an overpriced hotel she's staying, costs my boyfriend and me approximately $3,000 yours. This excludes additional costs for pre-pre, day 1, pre-2, and post-wedding parties, 4, where guests are expected to cover their shares. Forced into a costly, continent-wide scavenger hunt for a specific bridesmaid dress that the designer no longer produced, so we looked into odd lots in Europe, ending in a $600 unflattering outfit. Despite efforts and discussions, bridesmaid number 1 and I, the bride's insistence led to frustration and compliance with her demands. Experiences of being treated cheaply, like being asked to reimburse $8 per person at a BEQ the day after my boyfriend and I hosted a party without expecting repayments. Non-financial demands extend beyond bridesmaid duties, including organizing music, translators, makeup specialists, and more, which feels more like labor than honor. I've reached my limit after being asked to contribute another $500 for a civil wedding gift organized by another friend. I've told this friend that we've decided not to further bankroll the wedding, telling the friend the bride should have a more affordable wedding that doesn't overly burden guests. I had initially planned to discuss this with the bride after the wedding, but the friend urged me to talk to the bride before the wedding and not wait another half year. Would I be the idiot for telling my friend I won't bankroll her wedding? Background context. We're all in our mid-30s, living in Western Europe, but except for me, who's local, all others are from Eastern Europe. My friend and I know each other since the first year of university in country A. I moved to country B, a neighbouring country, straight after uni. My friend moved here 5 years ago, and all of us are expats in country B. We all have solid careers and incomes. While we all earn well to very well, I think the financial expectations for this wedding have become unreasonable. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Absolutely not the jerk. I've never, in my life, heard of a wedding that is funded by the invitees. I'd be embarrassed if I had to ask all of my wedding guests to pay for stuff because I can't afford it. She shouldn't be getting married, and you're a good friend, because after the first $1,000 in your currency you spent, I would have told her to go to hell with gasoline-lined panties on. Comment 2. Not the jerk. You're not ruining her wedding day, you're just fed up with having to chip in. There's a difference. Plus, you are a bridesmaid. Honey, $100,000 destination weddings and all this pay-for-yourself stuff means that these people would be better off buying themselves a personal vacation. Now, for the update. Hey everyone, thanks for all the comments on my last post. I really appreciated the advice and support. So, it's been a week since I last updated you all, and let me tell you, things have escalated in ways I never expected. After I decided not to contribute to the civil wedding gift, I thought the drama would die down. But boy was I wrong. Bridesmaid number 1, who's always been the peacemaker, tried to smooth things over by talking to the bride. She reminded her of the time when we were all broke students in country A, sharing meals and dreaming of simple weddings. But the bride wasn't having any of it. She accused us of not understanding her vision and said that if we were true friends, we'd find a way to make it work. The tension was thick when we all met for coffee to discuss the bachelorette party plans. Bridesmaid number 2, who's known for her fiery temper, finally snapped. She confronted the bride about the financial strain she was putting on everyone. The bride retorted with a comment about bridesmaid number 2's recent expensive car purchase, and that's when things got really heated. In the midst of their shouting match, bridesmaid number 2 revealed that she had caught the bride's fiancé in a compromising position with another woman during a business trip to country A. The room went silent. The bride, in shock, refused to believe it. But bridesmaid number 2 had proof, a photo she had taken on her phone. The bride stormed out, and we were left to pick up the pieces. The next day, the bride called me, sobbing. She had confronted her fiancé, and he had admitted to the affair. The wedding was off. She was heartbroken, not just because of the betrayal, but because her dream wedding, the one she had been meticulously planning for over a year, was now a shattered fantasy. I felt a mix of emotions: anger at her fiancé for his infidelity, relief that I no longer had to deal with the financial demands, and sadness for my friend's heartbreak. We had all been through so much together since our university days, and it felt like those bonds were being tested in the most painful way. In the aftermath, the bride's sister, who had been quiet throughout most of the planning, stepped up. She had always been the one we least expected to take charge, given her shy nature. But she organised a small get-together at her place, just for us girls, to support the bride. It was a far cry from the lavish events we had been preparing for, but it was intimate and heartfelt. We reminisced about old times, like when the bride had helped me through a tough breakup during our second year of uni. We laughed, we cried, and for a moment, it felt like the weight of the wedding had been lifted from our shoulders. But the drama wasn't over yet. The bride's fiancé, in a desperate attempt to win her back, showed up at the get-together with a grand gesture. A new engagement ring, even more expensive than the last. The bride, still raw from the betrayal, rejected it outright. She told him that trust couldn't be bought and that she needed time to heal on her own terms. As for me, my boyfriend and I have been reflecting on our own relationship. We've realized that we value simplicity and honesty over extravagance and appearances. This whole ordeal has brought us closer, and we've decided to start saving for a future that's true to us, not one dictated by others' expectations. If you liked this video, you'll probably like these too. Also, while you're here, please consider subscribing. It's your support that keeps this channel alive and allows me to make better and longer videos. Have a great day.